Everyone who grew up attending Sunday school has heard the story of Daniel and the lion's den. But for a quick refresher, Daniel has the favor of King Darius, but other members of the king's court are jealous of Daniel and conspire against him by convincing King Darius to pass a law forbidding Daniel or his people from praying to God. Now, Daniel remains faithful to God and continues to observe God in spite of this, and is thrown into the lion's den for doing so. And God protects Daniel from the lions all night. It is a wonderful story of courage and faith on Daniel's part, and of faithfulness on God's part. Now, naturally, when reading the story of Daniel and the lion's den, people tend to focus their attention on Daniel and take their primary lesson from him, a lesson of courage and of faith. But that's not all there is to the story. Now, after Daniel survived his night with the lions and was pulled out of the pit, King Darius, knowing he was deceived, had all the men who conspired against Daniel rounded up, and they, along with their families, were all fed to the lions themselves. Now, when I was reading the book of Daniel this week, I was filled with this sort of sorrow and intense pity as I read that part, not for those who had wronged Daniel, but for their wives, and especially for their children. Now, for those who were present, it must have been an exceptionally grisly business to feed children who had done nothing wrong to a pride of lions. Now, I had thought along these lines in the past when reading this story, but never before now have I felt so affected. Probably because my wife and I just recently had a son. And the thought of my little boy being punished in a gruesome manner for something I did is too much to bear. Now, I have this terrible mental image of little children like my boy being dragged to the pit of lions, screaming in terror all the while, assuming they had any comprehension at all of what was about to happen to them through no fault of their own. And I can say with certainty that I would not have wanted to be the one carrying out King Darius's orders on that day. Now, perhaps it seems silly to be hung up on this one small verse of the story in which justice was done, but I can only think, if my actions affect my family, most especially my son, even to a fraction of the degree as did the actions of Daniel's enemies, I believe I should have all the motivation I could ever need to live an upright life, to be faithful to God, and to honor my family. If I mess up, if I fail to be a leader in my family, if I say fall into old habits, or if I, heaven forbid, have an affair, or if I become addicted to porn, that has the power to completely wreck my marriage and ruin not only my life, but my wife's life. And that means that our son's entire world, his family, and everything and everyone he counts on, his whole world is blown up. If I mess up, it doesn't matter how I rationalize it, or try to convince myself that I'm not hurting anyone. If I mess up, everyone in my life pays the price. I will not let my family be fed to the lions because I was too selfish to honor them and be faithful to God with my actions. Do you want to save your loved ones and do right by them? Let the Holy Spirit do His work in you and live in a way that honors God. Let Him guide you. Now, I'm not saying you won't face lions so long as you serve God. That's not the message at all. Okay, you will face lions in your life, spiritual battles, physical dangers, things are going to happen in your life. What I'm saying is, you will want to face the lions as a servant of God and not as someone who makes himself an enemy of God. Now, you may not have a family, you may be single and childless, but rest assured, your actions still affect more people in this world than you can possibly imagine, and you can multiply that effect exponentially for your every inaction, the things you choose not to do. Now, Teddy Roosevelt said, in any situation, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The second best thing you can do is the wrong thing. But the worst thing you can do is nothing. And he was right. Don't be paralyzed with inaction. This world is already full of believers who profess and do nothing. In fact, people who, even non-believers, people who profess their beliefs and do absolutely nothing. with their life. We have enough people like that. Be a doer and don't concern yourself with what other people think. People in this world are going to think you're crazy if you, heaven forbid, live a godly life. Do right by God and by extension, those who dwell in the world, because you are not of this world. You are to be separate from it. God has called you to be different, so go and be different. Dare to be different. Dare to be set apart from the crazy people in this world. Face down the lions, not as a faithless betrayer, but as a man of God.